Hello, dear viewers. Namaskar. Welcome to Moksha Media. You are with Moksha Hiramat. The Greek philosophy has its own saying in the history of philosophies. So many philosophers are born and bred and contributed a lot to the world philosophy in the land of Greece. Of course, other countries are not also an exception to this. The Indian subcontinent is also not an exception to this. It has given so many philosophers who thought of logically and provided a great base to understand the universe. So, like this, in one way or another way, we are not in a position to neglect the philosophy of any land. In the background of this, we have to look at the philosophy of Greece and its philosophers. Of course, most of you have heard the philosophers such as Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Pythagoras, and etc. etc. But some of you may know the name of Heraclitus. Heraclitus is not that much of familiar as Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. But Heraclitus has his own saying in the field of philosophy. When all the Greek philosophers were thinking of the scientific understanding of the universe, Heraclitus already had come to a conclusion. Of course, that Heraclitus was born and bred during 535 BCE and 475 centuries BCE, that is before Common Era. So this Heraclitus had contributed a lot to the philosophy of world. He had his own understanding of the universe. His understanding is relevant even today. So many philosophers of nowadays would like to remember his findings, his understandings, his scientific conclusions regarding the universe. Of course, Heraclitus believes in changes. He says everything is changed, but that change is also different. What is changed now may not be the same in the coming changes. Change is also changed for all the time. That is what Heraclitus proved. But it seems to us change is same. Some people say history is repeated. Even though history is repeated, but that is not the same repetition. So even the change is there, the change is not the same as we think, as we see. We see the road up and road down is the same, but it is not the same. A kind of change can feel in that change, in that road. So that is why Heraclitus says that the world is in flux, world is in continuous change, world is unstable, that is the universe is unstable, universe is in flux. What we see is not the same universe. Everything, every time, it goes on and on, changing forever and ever. But man is unable to understand that change in his own way. He tries to understand the universe in a type of different way. Definitely he can feel that change. But we cannot say, we cannot predict that change. Change is always there. Whether it is a change for goodness or badness is different. Some changes leads towards the goodness and others towards the badness. And sometimes badness leads to goodness and vice versa. But that change is there. So that change can be felt in the universe. This change is controlled by a divine logos. That is what Heraclitus proved, Heraclitus opined. That is, that a divine log means a kind of reason, a kind of understanding. That is a divine reasoning. So he stresses on the divine reasoning. As per that divine reasoning, the world goes on, the universe goes on and on changing. So it is unstable. It is not static. It is a jangama. It is in moment. Of course, static leads to moment and moment leads to static. But that is a change. Stira leads to Jangama, that is the Stavara leads to Jangama, Jangama leads to Stavara in Carnatian context. That is, whatever Stavara may not be Stavara for all the time. Whatever Jangama may not be the Jangama for all the time. But there is a change. That change takes its own place. Both of the things are pushing the change to on and on. So, life is full of changes, that is, the universe is full of changes, and man should try to understand universe in the background of this change. And then only a society can lead a life of happiness and it can prepare its citizens towards that change. So, the universe is not static, it is not stable, it is constant, it is not constant. The universe is inconstant, the universe is in flux, the universe is in change. So that change matters everything. We have seen so many changes from the life on earth to the end of the life and to the beginning of the life. It goes on and on. So, Heraclitus gives another popular example. He gives the example of a river. When you step into the river, you feel the touches, that is of water. You feel the sense of the water. If you get into the water after some time, you think that the water is same, but no. Water is not same. Water is also changed. What you stepped previously is already flown further. What now you have stepped and it is a changed water, but you do not identify that change. It seems water is same to you, but actually water is not same. Every moment, the water goes on and on changing. A new water flows on and on, but we do not sense that flows of new water, new drops of water. So, when we look at the river, we feel water is same. But my dear friends, water is not same. The river carries different waters in a different context, at a different time. The flow may be same, but not the water. So water changes on and on. Drops of water goes on and on changing every moment. If you step into the river now, the drop of water is different compared to the step you put previously into the water of the river. So, last river flows, that is, river flows on and on for all the time, and it joins the sea and the ocean. Of course, it is also saying the same thing. That is, water in the ocean is also changed. But it seems the ocean is not changed. It is just like looking at the earth and feeling that earth is not revolving around the sun. Earth is not rotating itself and earth is not revolving around the sun. But actually, earth rotates itself and it revolves around the sun. That is what the theories of modern days prove it. On the basis of these theories, we are able to go to moon, we are able to go to other satellites, other planets in the universe because of this understanding. What we say a modern science is already seen in the history of philosophies in the world. And Greek philosophy is not an exception to this. But the other philosophies which are in a reverse position are also popular in Greece, especially the millennious schools of thought. They say that the universe is stable, universe is constant, universe is not in change. Of course, that is, change leads to change. That is, when day comes, it stays for some time and then it disappears, leading to the darkness. And when the dark appears, it stays for some time and leads to day. So, light and darkness are always there in the universe. So, we have to understand the divine logos of those things and we have to adapt to those divine logos. Then only man can lead the life of peace and he can lead the life of happiness and peace. So, otherwise, if he goes in a reverse mode, definitely one cannot lead the life of happiness. What is happiness? What is peace? They are the different terms. But here, that is not the platform to discuss all those things. All those things are discussed somewhere. But here, as a matter of fact, I refer to them. So, Heraclitus clears these points and stresses on the change. And of course, later onwards in the 20th century, Hegelian school of philosophy accepts it and it gives a different term as, as the term of dialectics. Whatever is there, and whatever is not there, it is there. And this there and not there pushes the wheels on and on. So, sometimes life is a dialectical one. But of course, other philosophers of the 20th century carried on this point and contributed something to the history of philosophy. What is seen in the 5th and 4th centuries of before Common Era is even today correct. Is even today proved. That shows the greatness of those philosophers of Greece. And the philosophy of Heraclitus is very near to Indian philosophy of monism. And in Kannada it is said Ekeshwari Vada. So, that change is very near to the monism. Universe is not dualistic. It is not dualistic. It is non-dualistic. It is not pluralistic. It is monistic. So, Heraclitus comes very near to the Indian understanding of universe. So that is why a kind of relationship can be felt between philosophers of Greece and the philosophers of Indian subcontinent. That it shows to what extent the Indian philosophers are also ahead of others. But sometimes we have forgotten our own philosophers. Just like saying, the plant in the backyard of a house is not good for the persons of that house. So, if our view is changed, then only we can come to know the importance of what we have understood and what we have contributed to the world. So, in this way, if we have looked at the history of the philosophy, definitely we can lead a life of peace and happiness. Ultimately, leading the life of peacefulness is very important, Everything is there, but not the peace. Then how can you lead the life? That generally often and often we use the word nemmadi. We have everything, but we don't have any nemmadi. So automatically everything will be wasted. So whatever we have, that is a step. At the same time, that nemmadi is also very important. Peace of life is also very important. In one way or another way, man tries to have a life of peace. He tries to lead a life of peacefulness. And if one understands this hidden philosophy of the universe, definitely one can lead the life of peacefulness. And for this peacefulness, we should be grateful to the Greek philosophers and Indian philosophers and other philosophers in the universe, in this world also. I hope I have brought to you home the truth. I hope you have caught some of the points I revealed in this lecture. Subscribe and share it. See you in the next episode. Thank you. Namaskar.